Welcome to Heart of the Matter, the programme which is committed to telling you the truth about who must do what and why if the Palestine problem, the cancer at the heart of international affairs, is to be cured before it consumes us all. My guest this week is a former long-serving MI6 officer. In 2004, and partly because he was frustrated by the refusal of Western governments to talk to Hamas and Hezbollah, he founded Conflicts Forum. He is Alastair Crooke. He is driven by the belief that the West needs to listen to political Islam and recognize resistance. Conflicts Forum is based in Beirut. Its mission is to open a new relationship between the West and the Muslim world. Alastair Crooke, welcome to Heart of the Matter, and thank you for finding the time to be with us. I'd like to start with a 9/11 question. Seems to me that's a good place to start. After it, Americans asked, why do they hate us? And the they of the question, as they asked it, was not just the Islamic fundamentalists, violent people who carried it out, but generally speaking, Arabs everywhere and Muslims everywhere. Now, President Bush was so determined to have a war that he didn't stop to bother to ask the question, let alone answer it. If he had done so, what could he have learned? What might he have learned?
Well, I think what you say is very right. Of course, policies of the United States, both then, but particularly subsequently to that period, have caused enormous anger. Real anger, of course, what has happened in Palestine, what has happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, but also elsewhere in Lebanon and Somalia, throughout the region. Iran, possibly. There is enormous sense of real anger that people have become victims of American policy. So I think it's quite right. But I think if he had asked that question, I think many people would have said, actually, that what we're talking about is also something that is far deeper. It is, in a sense, the way in which the West, and particularly the United States, has acquired a mindset of domination, of treating not only human beings, but nature itself, as objects to be controlled and to be dissected and to be used for purposes. And I think, in a sense, this is a new racialism, a racialism of civilizations, a hierarchy of civilizations in which the West sees its civilization as the most appropriate one for the future. Its institutions, its sociological, organizational principle, its, if you like, economic principles, as clearly more advanced, more superior, and the template that should be imposed on others. And I think it is the sense of this mindset that implies, if you like, a hierarchy of civilizations. And I think when people often talk about legitimacy, and they say, well, if you speak to someone, you're granting legitimacy on that group, whether it's Hamas or Iran or whatever, stems from this idea of a hierarchy of civilizations where if the top of the hierarchy condescends to speak to a lesser civilization or an Islamist movement, that somehow they're granting legitimacy on them. So I think that there is beneath this a really deep sense of concern and anger at a mindset, at an approach, at a vision.
Right, so it's not just the policies,
it's not just
of which in particular there is support for the Zionist state of Israel, right or wrong, and the double standard. It's not just that. You're saying while they are true, it is this...
It is the values.
Driving them, the values.
It is the values. And I know that it's people frequently say that it's not a matter of values, but it is a matter of values. It's a matter, and I think Islamist movements and generally Muslims throughout the region would say that it's about returning to a sense of human values, and that is what has got lost very often in the West, is the sense of innate human values, and that what we see is the policies that reflect, if you like, a dehumanization of the human being.
Well, I often think, and I often say on public platforms, that I think the name of the game for all of us ordinary citizens is to claim back our humanity. Are you saying that that's a large part of Islam of today?
It's very much at the center. It's putting the human being back. And I think I had a talk with a friend in Tehran, an eminent cleric and a sheikh, who said the West's greatest transgression, this was after 9/11, after Iraq and everything that's happened, is what they have done to the human being, the dehumanization of the human being, and the removal of human being from the center of gravity, and the removal of human values, and the capsizing of the West into a system that is dehumanizing in both its organizational aspect, but also in its politics and the way it approaches other civilizations and other societies.
Alastair, let's talk for a moment about Islamic militancy, including violent Islamic fundamentalism, as we call it here in the West, and where it came from. Is it not the case, for example, that Israel was the godfather of Hamas? I mean that Hamas would not have come into being, certainly would not have become an important, significant force, if Israel had ever been prepared to make peace with Arafat, when he had persuaded his institutions that a two-state solution they had to go for.
Well, I think that the circumstances of what happened in Gaza clearly gave a stimulus to Hamas. But I would not go as far as to say that it would not have come into being if there had been a state, because I think one has to look more widely at the region. And I think that if one looks at it simply in those terms of saying that Hamas is simply a reaction to what happened by Israel, that Hezbollah is a reaction of that, clearly these groups do represent defiance. But that is not it. It is more than that. They also represent a vision. They have a vision about a future. They have a vision about the human being and his place within society, the relationship between human beings within a community, about how communities should function and how communities should relate to one another. And it is a view that is very different, if you like, from the Western organizational principle of individualism. They look much more at community cohesion as the organizational principle for these movements. So I think that many of these movements with a very different vision for the future would have come about. Maybe Israel's actions, the occupation of Gaza gave it a push, and if you like, even now, the circumstances of the region are helping the mobilization of these movements. But their ability to really energize people, to give people a sense of real desire and real interest, and to what we saw in the Iranian Revolution, is not just simply defiance, it's much more substantial than that.
That's a fair point and well taken, but if we look particularly at Hezbollah, now I think, and I'll bow to you if you tell me I'm wrong, I'm pretty certain Hezbollah would not have come into being, certainly with any